You are listening to Kickspot.
All right, what's going on, Kickspotters? And we're back. If you've been tuning in, you've been listening to us on 106.3 FM or some of our streaming sites on Spotify, Apple Podcast, under the Kickspot. And then if you're following our news, it's probably on our Instagram at _Kickspot.
We're also on YouTube. Please subscribe, like, and comment.
Everybody's using smash the like button. So
Yeah.
you guys can
Smash the like button.
do that. But before during our first segment, we have been talking to our guest Audrey about her business. So make sure you tune in and listen to that. But what we wanted to cover this time was
Explain the business. What's the business?
the wedding event planning business. And I guess like for me, understanding the wedding industry is very foreign to me. So it's very, very interesting. I just had the perception of like the movie, you know, J-Lo. Yeah.
Thank you.
Like the wedding planner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only perception that I really had. But obviously, talking to Audrey, there's a lot more that's involved in that. Especially, I do agree with you. Being a counselor in that sense is just automatically a different type of job description, right?
sure.
That you don't really talk about too often.
Yeah.
So, but going into actually counseling, I'm sure that there are a lot of counseling sessions that you have to have recently within the last 6 months. With COVID happening and how you had to shift your business. First, how is your business currently during COVID?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really busy, but not with new couples. So not new clients.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of damage control and putting out fires.
Yes, she has.
Yes, yes, I have. Particularly Migs's fire. He's the largest and most.
It's because they have a
Commanding.
big
The
family.
one she cares more about. Let's put it that way.
I am more invested in this one personally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you talk about that, like how does that work for you? Like obviously you said that you had like set rates. So did you change like your packages in a sense because of COVID or?
No,
what are you doing now?
I mean, I think in general as a business owner, right, with anything that happens, be it a pandemic or a natural recession in the economy, like we just have to shift and like move with the times. And so this is just one of those movements that nobody has a choice about. So I'm not like upping my rates because of anything. It's definitely not in the control of my couples. So if anything, they're getting more support for whatever, with what's going on. I mean, Migs knows like it's a lot and I feel bad. Like I wish there was something I could do to like have them not go through this. I think most vendors in the industry are feeling that way right now. We're just trying to be flexible and just really supportive for the couples. And that doesn't mean that specifically because of this, that I'm going to charge more because I have to work more.
No, and she's been like 100%, especially with, my other half. She's been there for SAPs, for certain things that I can't be there for her for. But it's just one of those things where it puts a big toll on the bride on a scenario where nobody has certain control. And week by week, day by day during COVID, it's like you don't know how the venue's going to be, the vendors are going to be, like if they're going to change the rates, and you just don't know what the news that we're going to get from, our consultant. And because, it's like, is it going to be bad news? And then it just puts more strain on the, not only on the planning, but it can put strain on the relationship for that couple. I mean, that's huge, right? They're supposed to be going through the process. Yes, it can be stressful, but it also, she's making it fun, and that's what they're supposed to do. They're trying to make it seamless for you guys to go through the process. That's why we hire people like her.
Yeah. It's just to like kind of go off what you were saying. It's like, I appreciate you seeing the value of what I do now. Because sometimes it's hard. It's like to have couples see the value in what I do before they have their wedding.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
very different. Because in hindsight, couples are like, I should have hired a wedding planner. I should have had a wedding coordinator. And I mean, I'm like here, like, yeah, of course, get a wedding planner, get a but that's me saying it because that's what I do. But like all those things that couples think it's like hard to like figure out budget, to figure out rentals, to figure out spacing, timeline, all that stuff, that comes naturally to me. I've done it a million times, and it just works like clockwork for me. And like I think the quality of life when it comes to planning is what's priceless, right? Like if the entire time you're planning a wedding and you hate doing it, why are you planning a wedding?
Yeah. You know, during this time, the governor in California has obviously changed group gatherings. So in Migs' situation, I remember him telling me, hey, I don't think we're going to have the wedding right now. We're going to have to move it till next year. And obviously there's a lot involved in that. You talk about the vendors that you've hired. So what happens in that sense? Like, do the vendors just like switch it to next year? Like, what is your process during that time?
Yeah, my personal process is if I'm available, I'll switch it. There's no transfer fee. I'm happy to save the new date. Like, I don't know if Migs has like told anybody else, but he is switching his wedding date, and I'm 100% there. There's no like shift in contract or anything like that, except that it's just a new date, and that's it. And I'm there to support that.
And the vendors also.
Yeah.
Like, do you have to choose different vendors because of
well,
that? Well,
here's the difficult part, and it's situational. So I just want to clear that it's situational. So I'm speaking for me and Sap's situation, right? So she did most of the legwork. So she set up the meeting with our vendors, with the venue, and then we had to pitch them on, hey, this is something we can't control because this is a pandemic.
Yeah.
So because one of the things was they were going to charge for changing the date. You know, which I completely understand on a business level, because the way they explained it to me, which made sense, was another couple could have had that date. So if you guys are gonna switch it, right? Like that was a date that another couple could have had. So just for that inconvenience itself, as a business, we have to try. And I completely get that.
But if the governor is saying that you can't have group gatherings,
no,
then,
I understand.
Then no couple would be able to.
Well, that's why they never charged us the rate.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were able to move it without charging us. But that didn't happen unless she took initiative on sending a Zoom call, meeting with them in order to talk about these pain points during the wedding.
A lot of being proactive.
Yeah, it's
in this current situation.
Exactly. So,
do you get a lot? Like I've seen recently, I think I've seen 3 of my friends get married, just paperwork wise.
Yeah.
And I think on all 3 comments, it was because of the pandemic, we decided that we're not going to have like the actual wedding. We're just going to get paperwork because we love each other. And then years later or a year down the line, we're going to, obviously have a wedding. Is that a typical case now that you're getting a lot of?
Yeah.
Like people are still like wanting to just get the paperwork just so they can say that they're married, or?
Yeah. I mean, most of my couples have been honoring their original wedding dates, so they are getting married.
Oh, wow.
Like civilly getting married on their actual wedding date, and then they're having and then they're having their celebration, because it is. I mean, it's not just like, oh, we just want to get this over with and like get married. It's like they also want to start the rest of their lives, and a lot of that entails possibly having children, or like, I don't know. A lot of it is that, I think. But it is also just this feeling of like, okay, well, how much longer does my life have to be on hold? Like everything that we're doing right now feels like it's a pause.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that you can have a decision on, something like marriage, if you can decide that is something that you want to do now, like that's what a lot of couples are doing, is they're honoring their original wedding date by getting legally married, and then they're postponing their celebration until next year when things will open back up.
So I want to kind of bring in a different set of like topics. So the wedding industry is a $300 billion a year industry.
So proud to know that.
How do you know that information?
I just do. All right. So it's a $300 billion a year
fact.
industry. So just imagine that, 300 billion, not million, billion. All right. And they used to say, or from what I've read before, that the wedding industry is recession proof. Reason why it's called, a lot of people say that it's recession proof is because everyone will always want to celebrate their wedding day.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, and they're
How-
not going to not get married.
However, it is not pandemic proof, right? It's not. I mean, we're seeing it right now. So my question is, so I shift my conversation to from what you've seen since March, since the United States have been on lockdown or semi-lockdown, depending on what state you're on. How has the industry shifted? How's the industry shifted for couples, and how has the industry shifted for just as an industry itself? Like, where did you see, like, what kind of changes has happened in the last 4 to 6 months?
Yeah. I mean, for couples, it's shifted in the sense where nothing's happening, you know, celebration wise. There's a lot of couples are still getting married. But celebration wise, it's shifted to either like something that you've done where you're postponing your wedding, or it's downsized greatly. So micro weddings are really huge right now.
Micro wedding.
Micro
What is
weddings.
that?
That's
That
a
is a
new
term.
term.
It's a term.
A smaller wedding. A
A
smaller.
smaller wedding. It's any
yeah.
wedding that is under 75 people.
Ooh, I like that term. Micro wedding.
Yeah. Definitely you can't have a
Yeah,
micro wedding.
definitely
You
not.
have too much family.
And friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So couples have shifted. I mean, it's amazing, like seeing how the industry has really come together to be able to provide support to these couples. Cause it's like one of the biggest things in your life that you can celebrate, right? Getting married, buying a home, having your first child. Like these are life markers. And so I think couples have been shifting to like micro weddings or just smaller celebrations, or being very flexible in the sense like, okay, well, we're going to get married on paper, but we'll celebrate next year. And then in the industry with like vendors and venues and things like that, it's been incredible to see like how we've all just come together, one, to support each other as small business owners. Like it's like this pandemic has been very bonding. I actually have expanded my network, probably like doubled it in size during this pandemic, because of the fact that we're all small business owners. We're all just trying to survive, and we're all just trying to provide support to couples who are feeling really hopeless right now. And with that, it's been like this huge shift with like, okay, well, how am I going to, me personally, survive as a business owner? Like, how am I going to continue to pay my bills and keep my business alive so that I can continue to provide support to these couples? And like, what will my business look like in the future? Because events are changing. They will be changing in the future. And like, I don't know if this is going to get too far past maybe a future question that you're going to ask, but like this year in 2020, there were 80,000 couples alone that were supposed to get married in the greater Los Angeles area.
Wow, that's a
Didn't you
lot.
tell me like 2020 was like the
2020?
wedding year of all the years?
Yes. Yeah. So,
Can you elaborate on that?
yeah. So, I mean, I think it's because 2020, like we all carry a little bit of a superstition or like belief in numerology to some extent. And a lot of couples that I have been like speaking to, well, last year and the year before, they were holding out for 2020. Because if you look at like the calendar year, we had February 2nd, 2020. So that's 2/2/2020 was a Sunday. So a day that people could get married. August 8th, 8/8/2020 was a Saturday. October 10th, 10/10/2020 is a Saturday. Couples, these days were the days that I was booked the quickest and had the most inquiries.
They're crazy.
Are they like
Yeah.
of a certain ethnicity? You know, because
No,
like there's
no, at
superstition
first
with
I
like
thought-
Chinese
Right,
like
yeah,
numbers
and I
stuff.
thought that at first because I know that the Chinese are really big on numerology and
Yeah.
stuff, but no, like there were certain couples where they were like of no particular like religious background, or you know, like
Interesting.
they
is
were
interesting.
of different ethnicities, like interracial couples, and couples were coming to me and they were like, I have to get married on this date, and this is the date we're getting married. And but 2020 in general for other outside of numerology was just a really big year. And so if you think about the fact that like 80,000 couples in LA County alone were going to be getting married this year that are now not getting married this year, when are they going to get married next year?
Yeah.
2021 is going to be impacted. And there was a huge study actually put on The Knot, which is a really, it's like a huge wedding website. And they did a survey that asked couples, you know, like, are you still planning on getting married, or are you no longer going to be getting married and just doing civil? And I think it was 85 to like 90% of the couples said that they are still planning on having a wedding celebration. So that means that most likely they will be getting their wedding celebration will be next year. So 2021 is going to be busy.
I think it's going to be bigger and badder.
Yeah, because people are just like,
Yeah. They're
we're
like
done.
anticipating.
We're done hiding.
Well, I mean, I'm not responsible for planning, you know. So yeah, that's your stress, you know. So yeah.
With these like micro weddings, so you're saying it's 75 or less, right?
Yeah.
So are there new like CDC guidelines that they also have to comply with? Like everybody's getting checked, like the vendors also have to go through a certain phase.
Oh, good question,
Is
bud.
that something that they're doing or they're not?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends. A lot of these micro weddings are now happening on private properties. So it basically just depends on
them?
on the hosts, so the couple, or on the catering company. Catering companies are basically taking precautions the same way restaurants do. So all their servers will be wearing gloves and masks. Buffet lines
Are done. They have to serve you, right?
Yeah, the buffet lines now will be very different. It's not self-serve. It's going to be a server at each station serving you. They're minimizing as much as possible the contact between food and guests. So that's something. And then a lot of companies are doing like temperature checks for the workers, for the staff.
Yeah.
But it's not required for the guests.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
A lot of it is the hosts. It's up to the host. So it's up to the host if they're going to require their guests to wear masks or not, or if it's
Or like 6 feet, like
Right.
separating them. It's up to the host.
the venues require 6 feet
Yeah.
for tables for distancing.
And they're limiting it. Like, so for us, they were limiting a table to only have like 5 people,
Yeah.
like 6 max, when normally they can have 10
Yeah.
in like in a table.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are certain like guidelines that a lot of venues are having to follow. It's a little bit, it's funny because it's still a large gathering.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of venues are they're trying to be respectful of the current situation, but also very respectful of like, a lot of couples don't want to see their guests in masks. And
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
one thing. for us.
You don't want to wear a mask? You may kiss the bread?
you make
No,
it lift the
dude.
mask.
No, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, put it back on.
Yeah. So venues they're trying to be like compliant with CDC regulations, but at the same time, they're very aware that like couples are not wanting to hide from their family members and their guests. And so, yeah.
Are there guidelines for wedding events?
It's right now, it changes like every,
Yeah, because I know per industry,
Yeah.
there's like a checklist of stuff.
yeah.
But is there something there?
Like as of today, I believe, right, Newsom just announced that indoor stuff is closing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I don't even know in this moment, like what the new guidelines are. But if you asked me this morning, I would have said that the gathering had to be under 100 people. So that was a big reason why Migs wanted to change his wedding date, was because 100 people barely covers him and Sappy's family, you know? So, yeah. So
Let's be real.
that was one of the really big like guidelines. And then another big guideline was that like servers had to wear masks and gloves, just like restaurants. A lot of like what is happening with venue serving staff is like somewhat mirroring restaurants. So that is a way you can kind of like keep yourself updated. If you know what's happening in a restaurant, then you kind of know what's happening in a venue.
So what do you, so I know you have weddings that are lined up for August, September, October.
Yeah.
How have you kept your clients and, your couples that you're working with, not just us, besides us, how have you kept them in the loop, and how have you kept them updated? How have you kept them interacted and educated on what's going on a daily, on a weekly, and on a
Yeah.
monthly? Because that's probably one of your biggest stressor is because you care so much about the couples.
Yeah.
You want them to feel like you don't want them to feel like their wedding is gonna go to kaput just because of a pandemic. So how have you lessened some of that burden that they're going through?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of temperature checks with my couples, specifically my brides, because brides do naturally just, they're more involved in the planning. So it's
That's not true.
Yeah, unless you're Migs and you have a lot to say, which he always does. So
Is this true?
Hey, but my
totally
input
see
is
that.
there's two terms wedding planners use: is the bridezilla, but there's also the term groomzilla.
I am not a groomzilla. Okay, I am not a groomzilla for all you viewers.
Oh, I could
No,
totally
no,
see it.
I'm just
Oh
teasing.
my
He's
God.
not a groomzilla, but he's actually been really involved in a very positive way, providing support for Sappy because.
Can you
Yeah.
facts?
I will be very fair in that sense. But yeah, it's a lot of temperature checks with my couples. Like, hey, how are you feeling right now? Because I mean, even if the CDC said like, yeah, we could have exactly the amount of guests that you want at the wedding, and like you don't have to wear a mask. It's like, well, maybe that's not what's comfortable for my bride and groom.
Yeah.
So it's constant, temperature checks with them. Like, how are you feeling? Are you doing okay? Whenever I receive new news, I relay it to them. Even if maybe they've already received the news, I just want us to always be on the same page. But there's like this delicate balance, right? Like if I'm checking in too much or if I'm telling them too much, maybe it overwhelms them. So it's really it's different for each one of my couples. But just clear communication and being like, hey, I'm here if you need me. Text me whenever. So.
Do you have any more questions?
No.
Because I want to save the next
Yeah.
piece because I think it's going to be really good because it's a perfect transition actually. So we can take a break on this one because the next topic will be Audrey's going to give us tips for couples that are thinking about going through a possible wedding during a pandemic and also couples that are going through the pandemic right now. We want to hear from her definitely. She's got a lot of experience. She's going to give us a few tips and, of how to go through this time of 2020 and just how to get through it, so we'll be right back. Stay tuned, you guys.
Stay tuned.
You are listening to Kickspot.